it's me, Crystal, and today I want to do a writing advice I loathe video. I agree with a lot of writing advice that they give to people if you are a new writer and you're writing your first ever book ever. I don't need that kind of advice now. I need different kind of advice, like keep fighting the good fight and like trust yourself. Trust yourself is really good writing advice, especially if you're an intermediate writer or an advanced writer and you've been writing for a while, you know, and you struggle sometimes, and it's like the best writing advice across the board for everybody is trust yourself and also butt and chair and write, because sometimes sitting down and starting your story is just like the hardest thing is to just sit down and like just do it, you know. That is writing advice I like. Some writing advice that I don't like, there's really only kind of two schools of thought when it comes to writing advice that always kind of irk me a little bit. And one of them is all first drafts are crap. There are people who have been writing for years, longer than I've been writing, and they say stuff like, oh, well, first drafts are crappy. No, they're not. Okay, they're really not. And I'm not alone in this camp, but I feel like people who are in this camp, we don't want to talk because we don't want to come off as arrogant, but saying that our first drafts are not crap. And my first drafts are not crap. Sorry, not sorry. I just feel like as you grow as a writer, your first drafts do become cleaner. They do become less of big hot messes. Now, I feel like some people, they probably are always going to have first drafts that turn out crappy because that's just their process. But it doesn't have to be everybody's process, you know. I'm so tired of people saying that all the time, you know, because they don't say like, oh, it's okay if your first draft is crappy, which is a totally great thing to say, because some people, they need to hear that, and they need to hear even after maybe 10 years of writing, it's okay if your first draft is crappy. It's okay if it's just word vomit or whatever, you know. But instead of saying like things like that, they say things like, all first drafts are crap. And the other piece of writing advice that kind of irritates me when I hear it is don't compare yourself to others. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is what helped me grow as a writer, and I think instead of telling people not to compare their work to other writers, I think we should help people learn how to not dwell on it, because I think in a previous video I mentioned a book by Kelsey Sutton called Some Quiet Place, and I read that book and I was like, she's such a good writer, and I just feel like I just need to start from scratch, and everything I've ever written I need to trash, and oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? She's younger than me and she writes better than me. And I was really upset for like a week. But you know, I learned from that, and I learned how to get over that. And instead of sitting on those horrible, you know, worthless feelings that I felt, I'm like, try harder, right? I'm going to keep trying, because it's like I can't get better if I don't write, you know. And so I was able to pull myself out of it. And part of what helped is talking to other writers who say, you know, I've also fallen into that trap. I've also read something and it felt like it was so amazing and so great, and then I look at my story and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And basically the correct response when you read something that you think is amazing, that blows your mind, is to just keep writing. And it's good that something is blowing your mind, because it's like, oh my gosh, you have something to work towards, and you're like, okay, I want to write books that get people as excited as I was about that book, you know. That's basically how I learned to write, because like when I was writing, I wasn't surrounded by anybody else who was writing, and so I didn't have like other friends that, you know, wrote when I first started writing, and so I wanted to get better. Even at 12, I'm like, okay, so this sucked, and once I got over that, which took some months, I decided to try again, and then when that flopped, I decided to try again, you know. And one of the things that helped me was comparison. I would compare my book to a book that I liked, and then I could see, okay, so the pacing in my book is a little fast, you know, or, you know, the relationship doesn't have any tension. You know, I feel like that helped a lot, like comparing my work to the books I was reading. But like I said, the important thing is to learn how to compare your work without like dwelling on it, and without like starting your story over from scratch every time you read an amazing book. I feel like if you're a writer and you're like plugged in at all to the writing community. Like, you know, a writer who, like, for example, would read The Hunger Games and then start their book over from scratch, or they'll read something by Gillian Flynn and then start their book over from scratch, and then every time they read an amazing book, they start their books over from scratch, and they're crazy. And I feel like we all know writers who do that. I think the advice needs to be, you know, you find something amazing, you learn from it, and you keep writing, and you keep trying to grow, you know? I went through a spell around 2013, 2014, where I wasn't really writing stories that, like, meant a lot to me, and I was just kind of drowning. And you know, there were a couple things that I read that really helped me, and one of them was Horns by Joe Hill, son of Stephen King, because I think the year before I read Horns, I read Secret Window, Secret Garden. Like, after I finished reading it, like, I couldn't figure out what Stephen King was doing that I was not doing. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And then, like, when I read Horns, I realized I was approaching it all wrong. I shouldn't be asking, what am I doing wrong? I need to be asking, why am I not writing books that I love? Like, what am I doing with my actual writing? The thing about Horns is, it's not like it's a book that I wanted to have written. I love the idea, and I love the thought of writing something like that, but it was just the fact that there was something about that story that I found, like, really attractive. People might look at me like I'm crazy, like, oh my gosh, you can't compare yourself to Stephen King. And it's like, I feel like if I can hold up my story next to Secret Window, Secret Garden, or Horns, and I don't want to trash my story, then I feel like I'm on the right path. I feel like if I want to trash my story, then there's something about my story that's bothering me. That's kind of the way I was approaching it. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just kind of how, like, my brain works. And so I don't think comparison has to be a bad thing. I think it can motivate us. But like I said, the problem is so many people fall into this trap of this whining, you know, poor me, I'm never going to be that good trap. And I say, you know what, I think if I keep writing, you know, I can be like a better version of me. Like, I'm not trying to be like Stephen King. Like, we're different people and we write different books and we have completely different voices. But it's kind of like, by comparing my work to Stephen King's and Joe Hill's, I could see what it was in my work that was bothering me, and I could fix it, you know. And so I was like, I realized the problem was I was not writing stories that I was passionate about. I wasn't writing stories that I loved. And I don't know, when I was reading Horns, it just really helped me see that. And I'm like, if I wasn't comparing my work to theirs, I don't think I would have been able to see it that clearly, you know. But again, when we're comparing ourselves, I'm not comparing myself as a writer to them as a writer. I'm comparing, like, my body of work with, like, their body of work. I was looking at my work and I'm like, I'm not excited about this. I like to be able to do what I want. If I want a character who's 17, then that's what she'll be. And if I want a character who's 35, that's what they'll be. And if I want a character who's 20, that's what they'll be. And I'm like, there's not going to be any more, like, forcing myself because I'm afraid of what genre my book is going to go into. You know, like, I just feel like they were writing what they wanted and that they were writing without fear. It's what it felt like to me. And so it's like, if I want to raise myself up to a higher level than where I am now, I'm like, I need to write without fear. I need to write what I want, you know. I can't be like, oh, where's this gonna go in the bookstore? Like, don't worry about that when I finish it. That's what I used to do. And I don't know, I just felt free, and I just feel like comparison gets a bad rap, and comparison could be a very powerful motivator. And I think instead of telling people not to compare themselves, we should teach people how to compare themselves and how to stay out of those comparison traps where you don't get anything done, and instead use comparison as a motivator, as a stepping stone to, like, I don't know, like, push yourself higher or something. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. And yeah, so check out some of my other videos if you want, and I will see you guys later. Bye.